Okay, so let's try another sound. Let's click the plus at the bottom. So we've done bass. Guitar, I'll come back to that later. It's not that useful for the electronic music that I tend to use, but it's got some cool stuff going on in it, but I'll come back to that later. These are all the very, very same concepts to each other, really. So these stringed instruments all work quite similarly to the bass. So I'll forget that. Now, drummer, here we go. Shall I do that now, or shall I come back to that in a moment? I will come back to drummer actually after we've done drums, because this is a really, really easy way of getting some decent beats down. You've got these different settings. You've got smart drums, acoustic drums, and beat sequencer. I naturally go towards beat sequencer because it's what I'm used to using. It's literally just a grid where you can just put in your notes and it will just play back the notes that you've basically just put in. So, you know, you will be very familiar with any drum pattern that sounds a bit like this. You know, it's really easy to just put in something like that super quick. But again, one of the reasons I didn't like GarageBand that much at the beginning was because I struggled to figure out how you actually put that into your track. The answer is you literally just record it. So I've done that part just then in 2 seconds. Let's put a couple of floor toms in just to funk it up a little bit. And if you click record, it will record it into your track. You get the general idea. However, easy though that may be, actually what I prefer to do is use as a starting point some of the preset patterns that it comes with. To find those, you click on that little button there, and that brings up a whole load of different drum patterns, loads and loads and loads of them, for different types of different genres of music. So you can just take any one you like. Some of them are pretty rubbish, some of them are very, very good, but something really standard like that. And they've got all sorts of different things, and again you can just use them as they are, or you can change them. Some of them are really weird and hectic. Some of them are kind of straightforward. But for this, I am going to find something pretty easy. Actually, something I could just add is that this button here is like a dice. You press that, it literally makes up a random pattern for you. So if you're really stuck for inspiration and the presets aren't doing it for you, you can literally just get it to make up literally some random pattern for you, which is quite clever. Don't know how useful it is, but it's clever. So what else have we got? Classic house. Yeah. Yeah. That might be better because it's a bit less busy. Let's just try that, shall we? Okay, I'll undo that. You can also change your drum kits here. So the usual settings thing. Modern 808 does sound a bit like an 808, and you've got 909 here as well. Which actually doesn't sound too bad in this particular piece of music, but then you've got a load of other things here as well. Vintage beats, what's that? Trapdoor, synthetic bass house. Actually, that's not too bad. I'm going to change the kick drums around a bit so that they're a bit more straightforward. And and I will move the tom-toms around a bit so that they're not quite as annoying and frequent. That might be... How does that sound? Okay, well let's doesn't really matter. Let's just see how that sounds in the track. Okay, when you're recording it, you think something's not great, you can just knock it out. I could have left it recording, but I would then have had to go in and delete these tom-toms, which don't really work very nicely in this particular piece of music. So I've deleted the tom-toms manually. You just press it, the screen to add, and you press it again to remove. And I'm going to record that in as it is, because I think that kind of works okay with this little idea. So you would have noticed that I was just on the fly adding in a few little snare fills just at the end of each bar, just to, you know, add a bit of life. But you can do whatever you like. You can add in different things. You can also edit the sounds that are played by each of these things. So at the moment that is a kick drum, and you can play it, but you can also change it to any of the other sounds in each kit. It's not that useful to do that. The only thing that is quite useful is adding another sound if you want to one that isn't in the default. So bongos, let's say there were no bongos in that default, but if I wanted to put some in, I don't know. You can just add them in there if you like. In fact, why don't we add them in for fun? Let's go back to the sequencer. There's the drum line that we just added here. So let's just double click. We'll delete that because we're going to go back in and do it again. Let's take the tape head back to the beginning. Let's go back into our little drum editor, and I think it started with a clap and a snare at the end of each bar, but I'll put in some other. What I'll also do, I'll mess around with the tom-toms and the snares as it goes. So just hitting record automatically makes the sequencer, the drum sequencer, play. So off we go. There we go. So that's a simple drum part using the sequencer. I'll just quickly explain how you can use the other drum programming functionalities on a different drum part. So that was beat sequencer. Smart drums, if you press that, what it gives you is a little square, and what you do is you drag each sound from here in there. The play button is playing it, and then you can move it to make it either loud, complex, quiet, or simple. So that's kind of simple and quiet on that little shaker thing there. Obviously your obvious things would be like a kick drum, which you'd probably want on, I don't know, loud and simple probably for the kick drum. Snare drum, I don't know, complex and quiet. Your claps probably somewhere around your snare. Hi-hats and cymbals. You know, might be handy. You can obviously change your drum machines again. Oh, and if you do that, you lose your you lose the pattern that you just did, but that's okay. What I'll do actually is go to this house drum machine and see what that sounds like. Let's put a kick drum up there. Just literally just mess around with some sounds. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? So why don't we record that in as well? there's the power thing. This is going to sound awful if it's playing with everything else, so what I'll do is I'll just solo it and then go back into the settings and then record. So there we go. Now, as I said, it would sound horrible with everything else, but it might work nicely just with the bass. So let's just solo, there you go, solo the bass and solo that drum part we've just done, see how it sounds. So that's the other drum part that we recorded. Now, it's quite fun to have two completely different drum parts. I would never usually have two different drum parts, but it gives you an idea as to basically how this works. If I go back up here, what was the other? Acoustic drums. That's another kind of interesting way of doing stuff. For real drummers or people who relate well to real drums, you press acoustic drums and it gives you literally a drum kit which you can play with your fingers. I can't play the drums, so this to me is not at all intuitive, but I'm sure for a lot of people it would be. So let's come out of that because we don't really need that. And that is the drum programming, main thrust of the drum programming stuff in terms of actually programming drums in GarageBand covered. But the other little trick it's got up its sleeve is the rather excellent drummer functionality, which we'll cover in the next video.